Eliara watched the horizon flicker with artificial dawn, the colony's sun simulator struggling against a flickering generator. Most mornings, she arrived early to oversee the maintenance drones, checking life support systems before the human crew fully stirred. Today, however, she paused. Something in the system logs felt off. A signal had arrived overnight, unregistered and untraceable. The source was impossible, light years away, outside known traffic, yet precise, deliberate. The message wasn't encoded like a threat or warning. It carried a single phrase repeated 3 times, almost as if the sender had been unsure whether someone was listening. "I am alone." Eliara frowned. Security protocols required immediate quarantine of unknown signals, but instinctively, she hesitated. It wasn't hostile. The message wasn't a test or a prank. Somewhere beyond the stars, someone, or something, had sent a cry that reached the edge of human comprehension. She tapped into the communications array. The colony tower hummed beneath her fingers, screens flashing with its usual sterile precision. The array had been designed to scan for navigation updates, meteor trajectories, and distress signals, but never for loneliness. Yet there it was, a whisper across a void larger than any human mind could grasp. Eliara's pulse quickened. She was trained for emergencies, for failures, for calculations. She was not trained for the weight of another life, half a galaxy away, hoping someone would respond. By the time she activated the outbound transmitter, hesitation had vanished. Commands flowed through her fingers with practiced speed. She bypassed safety protocols, ignored warnings, and sent her own message in return. "You are heard. You are not alone." It was short. Simple. She didn't expect a response. Perhaps no one would ever answer. Perhaps she was screaming into a void that didn't care. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Drones hummed. Humans shuffled through breakfast lines. Colonists complained about artificial sunlight being too bright or too dim. Yet Eliara couldn't shake the memory of the signal. She kept checking logs, screens, even the empty docking bays. No reply had arrived. The universe, it seemed, had ignored her effort. Weeks passed. The signal became a small obsession. Eliara found herself standing in the empty corridors at odd hours, repeating the words she had sent. "You are heard. You are not alone." She muttered them under her breath like a prayer or a spell. Maintenance robots beeped politely as she passed, and she imagined their metallic attention was somehow approval. Then, 6 months later, the anomaly appeared. The early warning system shrieked through every terminal. Eliara spilled her coffee and cursed, abandoning her post to join the command center. A vessel hovered at the edge of the colony's perimeter. Its design was wrong. It had no right angles, no sharp edges, yet it moved with purpose. Its curves flowed like liquid metal, radiating an elegance no human craft had ever achieved. It was not a weapon. It made no demands. It was simply there, deliberate and undeniable. The vessel adjusted its trajectory slowly, methodically, as if it had expected human eyes to blink in wonder. Somewhere deep in the system logs, Eliara's response message was quietly marked as acknowledged. Colonel Marlowe leaned over her shoulder. "Are we all in danger?" he asked, voice tight but curious. Eliara shook her head. "No, I don't think so. It's polite." The colonel blinked at her. "Polite?" "The signal I sent," she said slowly, "wasn't expecting a reply. And yet, it came." The ship requested docking 10 minutes later. Not demanded. Requested. In perfect human standard protocol, with optional pleasantries. Eliara felt a headache forming. They were considerate, far more than humans deserved. Armed guards assembled around the docking bay, but Eliara was chosen to meet them. She had sent the signal. Responsibility, it seemed, could not be escaped. The airlock hissed open. Light spilled in, soft and almost liquid. The corridor shimmered faintly as she stepped inside, walls responding to her presence. Then she saw it, the being. At first glance, human enough to make her hesitate, but the details betrayed alien origin. Long, delicate ears framed a face more symmetrical than any human's, and eyes deeper than any ocean Eliara had ever seen. The alien spoke. "I believe you called," Her voice was calm, clear, entirely unconcerned with the number of guns pointed in her direction. "Eliara," the colonel whispered. The alien inclined her head. "I am Solara," she said. "And I have come because you invited the universe." The command center froze. Eliara's pulse raced. She had sent a message, a simple cry into the void, without expectation. And yet here she was, staring at the answer. "I didn't expect this," she admitted, words almost irrelevant. Solara smiled faintly. "No one does." Hours passed in conversation, protocols bypassed, polite questions answered honestly. Solara had lived centuries longer than humans could imagine, yet she did not overwhelm with arrogance. She asked questions, not about science or power, but about daily life. "Why do humans value bread?" she asked quietly. Eliara blinked. "Because it's comfort. It's home." Solara considered this, as if the answer was as strange to her as she was to humans. Days turned into weeks. Eliara discovered the challenge of sharing space with someone who had no need for sleep, no fear of time passing. Solara observed the colony with quiet attention, sometimes standing motionless for hours. Eliara learned to notice when Solara was thinking, not scheming, not judging, but simply existing alongside her. Through this, a fragile connection formed. Not friendship in the human sense, not mentorship. Something new, delicate, and unnameable. Eliara felt the weight of her own mortality in contrast to Solara's measured eternity, and yet she did not fear it as much. Then came the message from Solara's people. A thin band of light across the walls, symbols unfolding with precise inevitability. They noted her presence among mortals, questioned the prolonged stay. "I must return," Solara admitted. Eliara felt a tightness in her chest. "Because they requested it." Solara nodded. "Because staying may cause harm to you, to them." Eliara laughed once, dry and sharp. "That ship sailed the moment you answered the signal." Solara turned fully, ears catching starlight from the viewports. "I do not leave because of obligation," she said. "I leave when understanding is complete." Night fell over the colony. They walked beyond the lights, past the artificial horizon. Solara finally spoke. "I could stay, for your lifetime." Eliara's breath caught. "You say that like it's brief," she whispered. "It feels brief to me," Solara replied, softly, honestly. Time stretched in ways Eliara had never known. Their days became routines, small shared moments of observation, humor, and quiet understanding. Solara learned human endings, human celebrations, human grief. Eliara discovered that eternity did not mean confidence. It meant memory and the burden of witnessing centuries of life and loss. Yet, the signal remained the anchor of it all. Eliara realized, slowly, that her simple message had created a bridge across impossibly vast distances. She had expected nothing. And yet, in response, the universe had sent her an answer. Patient, deliberate, alive. Weeks later, as Eliara recalibrated the communication tower, she smiled quietly. Solara's presence was no longer an anomaly. She was part of the colony now, not hidden, not explained, just accepted. Humanity, with all its flaws, had reached across the void and been heard. The universe, it seemed, did care after all. Weeks had passed since Solara had arrived. The colony had adjusted to her presence with cautious curiosity. Children gawked through viewport screens, engineers whispered theories about her technology, and military personnel quietly admitted that no standard protocols applied. Eliara, meanwhile, had grown accustomed to her alien companion's habits, hours of still observation, a precision that made humans feel clumsy, and a calm that unnervingly balanced her own impatience. But normalcy never lasted long in space. The first warning came in the form of minor fluctuations in the colony's graviton stabilizers. A subtle wobble that could have been dismissed as a maintenance glitch turned into a cascade of irregularities across life support systems. Drones began reporting inconsistencies, alarms flickering and then fading before anyone could reach them. Eliara stared at the monitors, brow furrowed. "It's too precise to be coincidence," she muttered. Solara leaned over her shoulder, observing the streams of data. Your engineering is competent, she said softly, but your systems are designed for human limitations. They do not anticipate intentional interference. Eliara's stomach tightened. Intentional, she repeated. From whom? Solara's gaze was steady. From those who monitor communication across the stars. Eliara blinked. You mean, your species? Not mine, Solara corrected, tapping lightly on a holographic console. Symbols rearranged themselves into patterns humans could recognize. They are observers. Guardians. They respond rarely, but always precisely. Your broadcast, your signal, reached someone who noticed. Someone noticed and what? Eliara demanded, tension rising. Are they friendly? Solara's ears twitched slightly. Friendly is a human term. Their goals are indifferent. Efficiency is their law. You are a variable in their system now. Eliara felt her chest tighten. A variable? You mean, we're being tested? Solara did not answer immediately. Instead, she activated a display projecting the object detected in orbit around the colony. Unlike her first vessel, this one was larger, darker, and intimidating. It hummed with a subtle energy that made human instruments tremble. They are here, she said simply. To observe and to evaluate. Panic flared through the command center. Colonel Marlowe barked orders, but every calculation led back to one conclusion. No human technology could match this new presence. It did not move aggressively, yet every action was deliberate, measured. Every sensor ping returned an impossible answer. Eliara felt the weight of her earlier broadcast pressing on her. The signal she had sent in a moment of loneliness had not only summoned Solara, but it had drawn attention from beings far beyond human comprehension. She swallowed hard. We may have invited something far larger than we anticipated, she admitted. Solara's expression remained calm. That is often the consequence of honesty. Over the next 3 days, the alien vessel maintained its position just outside the colony perimeter. Its presence caused unpredictable gravitational distortions, making docking procedures risky and navigation systems falter. Yet it did not attack. It did not communicate. It simply watched. Eliara spent long hours at the control array, analyzing every pattern, every fluctuation. She noticed subtle signs. The ship's orientation mirrored human signals. It responded to transmissions not by decoding them, but by anticipating them. The observers were testing, not punishing. But the implications were terrifying. Any misstep could trigger a response humans could not survive. That evening, Eliara found herself walking alone along the colony's observation deck. Solara appeared silently beside her, posture relaxed but aware. You are troubled, she said. I am, Eliara admitted. We've drawn attention from. I don't even know who. Something capable of monitoring entire systems, deciding our fate in ways we cannot influence. And it's all because of one stupid signal I sent. Solara regarded her quietly. You underestimated your reach, she said. Humans rarely consider that even small actions ripple outward. That is both your danger and your strength. Eliara let out a bitter laugh. Strength. The only thing we've proven is that we can annoy beings that could crush us like insects. Solara's eyes softened. Do not underestimate humans, she said. You are far more resilient than you realize. You are capable of choice where others follow instinct. That is why they watch. That is why I am here. Eliara stared at her, considering the implications. You're saying we might survive this because of us? Yes, Solara replied. But survival is not guaranteed. Observation is relentless, and mistakes have consequences. The next morning, the observers made their first move. A series of pulses radiated from the vessel, targeting the colony's communications array. Sensors detected the pulses, but their structure was unlike anything human science could replicate, a mixture of energy, gravity modulation, and time phase interference. Eliara's console displayed erratic readings. Systems flickered, lights dimmed, and drones fell silent mid-flight. Panic erupted among the human crew. Colonel Marlowe demanded a response. Eliara froze. Her instinct told her to react, to push buttons, to send commands, but every choice carried risk. Solara stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Eliara's shoulder. "Stop," she said. "This is not a direct threat. They test comprehension and resilience. Your actions now are the measure of humanity's capacity to adapt." Eliara swallowed. She realized the truth. She was the bridge between humanity and beings whose scale dwarfed them. Her choices, her ability to remain calm, her ingenuity, it was all under scrutiny. She turned to the console. With Solara guiding her, she devised a series of counterpulses, not to fight, but to communicate understanding. The process was delicate. Too strong, and it could provoke. Too weak, and it could be ignored. Fingers trembling, she launched the first wave. The vessel responded immediately. A shimmer rippled across its surface. Patterns unfolded like fractals, responding to her adjustments. For the first time, Eliara felt something she had not expected. Connection. The observers were not faceless. They were interactive. And humans, small though they were, could be understood. Hours passed in tense calibration. Solara remained at her side, occasionally offering guidance, occasionally observing with quiet amusement. "You humans are fragile," she said once. "And yet, remarkably persistent." By the fourth day, the vessel's pulses had become synchronized with the colony's systems. Lights stabilized. Drones resumed their routines. The observers withdrew slightly, maintaining distance, but no longer radiated tension. The test, it seemed, was over. Eliara exhaled deeply, exhaustion weighing on her. Colonel Marlowe approached cautiously. Did we pass?" he asked. Solara smiled faintly. "You adapted. You survived scrutiny. That is sufficient." 3:14. The colony erupted in cautious celebration. Humans congratulated each other quietly, aware of the thin line they had walked. Eliara, however, felt the weight of responsibility more than relief. She had sent the signal that began this chain. She had acted as humanity's representative under unimaginable pressure. And yet, she had survived. Over the next weeks, Solara remained in the colony, not out of necessity, but choice. She began teaching Eliara and other humans subtle lessons about observation, patience, and understanding systems beyond instinct. They learned that intelligence was not only about calculations, but about perception, empathy, and adaptability. One evening, Eliara and Solara stood on the observation deck. The artificial sun dipped below the horizon. The observer vessel lingered on the edge of the system, faintly visible through reinforced glass. "Will they return?" Eliara asked. "Perhaps," Solara said. "Or perhaps others will watch now. That is the consequence of attention. But humanity has proven it can adapt." 3:36. Eliara considered this. "We are small," she said quietly. "And yet, we reached across the stars. We were noticed." Solara inclined her head. "Small, yes. But the measure of species is not size. It is persistence, curiosity, and the capacity to act with integrity under observation. You have shown all three." The night deepened. Colony lights flickered softly. Drones hummed in distant corridors. And somewhere, on the edge of known space, a vessel watched. But for the first time, Eliara did not feel fear. She felt possibility. Weeks became months. The observer vessel remained a silent sentinel. Humans adapted to its presence, learning to navigate systems it subtly altered. Eliara refined communications arrays, making them resilient to interference that no human engineer had ever imagined. Solara continued her quiet lessons, sharing perspectives centuries old, without arrogance, without judgment. And slowly, humanity began to change. The colony grew more than a settlement. It became a hub of ingenuity, a place where limitations were tested, boundaries explored, and the ordinary became extraordinary. One day, as Eliara calibrated a new long-range transmitter, Solara appeared beside her, eyes focused on the stars. "Do you ever regret sending the message?" she asked. Eliara thought for a moment. "Sometimes," she admitted. "The consequences were terrifying. But I also learned that we can reach across distances we never imagined. That even one voice can matter. Solara nodded. Indeed. You acted honestly, even when uncertain. That is often all that is required for change. The observer vessel pulsed lightly, as if acknowledging her words. Eliara smiled, feeling a quiet pride. She had survived scrutiny, navigated the unknown, and represented humanity on a scale previously unimaginable. And yet, she knew the universe was vast, indifferent, and patient. New signals would arrive. New challenges would test their ingenuity. But humanity had proven one essential truth: they could rise to meet the impossible. Solara placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. The universe listens, she said. And it answers when the voice is sincere. Eliara stared at the stars, feeling the weight of her smallness and the power of her persistence. Somewhere beyond the edges of comprehension, the signal she had sent continued to echo. Not as a warning, not as a plea, but as proof humanity existed. And they mattered. The observer vessel remained at the perimeter, quiet, patient. Eliara knew it might leave tomorrow, a week from now, or in a century. But she also knew humanity would endure. Small, fragile, curious, persistent, they had reached across the void. And in doing so, they had answered a call they had barely understood themselves. Solara turned to her, eyes reflecting the distant starlight. "Are you ready for what comes next?" she asked. Eliara smiled, fingers tightening on the console. "I always am," she said. "Because we are human." Above them, the stars continued their indifferent dance. Below, the colony thrummed with life. And somewhere, in the vast listening dark, a signal waited patiently to be answered again.